Emma Patel tugged her coat tighter around her as the morning wind swept through the parking lot. The sleek, glass-paneled building of Architect Solutions loomed ahead, its modern design intimidating despite the rising sun glinting off its mirrored windows. Today was only her third day on the job as a receptionist, and already the pressure of proving herself hung heavy on her shoulders. She had left her tiny apartment an hour earlier than necessary, skipping breakfast, convinced that early effort would outweigh inexperience. Her shoes clicked nervously on the polished lobby tiles as she entered, echoing louder than she'd like in the near-empty space. Emma tapped her keycard and stepped behind the reception desk. Everything looked fine, until she noticed the blinking red light on the copier in the corner. She frowned. Error, paper jam. Toner low. Of course. Just her luck. Panic flickered in her chest. The senior executives had a major client meeting at 9 a.m. And she had been asked to print 30 spiral-bound portfolios as part of the presentation. The materials were loaded and ready to go, except now the copier had decided to throw a tantrum. Emma rolled up her sleeves and crouched beside the large machine. She tugged at the paper tray, peeked inside, and carefully reached in to dislodge a crumpled sheet. Nothing budged. A few more attempts, and her fingers were streaked with toner. The machine beeped at her again, this time louder and more impatiently, like a fussy toddler. She sighed and pushed her hair back, leaving a smudge of toner on her cheek. "Need a hand?" came a warm, gravelly voice behind her. Startled, Emma turned around to see a man in his late 50s standing nearby. He wore a faded blue work shirt with sleeves rolled up, and gray trousers that had clearly seen years of labor. He carried a worn-out toolbox in one hand and a cloth tucked into his back pocket. His face was gentle, with kind eyes that crinkled when he smiled. She straightened quickly. "Oh, yes, please. This thing is way over my head." The man chuckled softly as he set down the toolbox and knelt beside the copier. "It's a stubborn model. These old ones always jam at the worst times." Emma tried to smile through her embarrassment. "Are you the janitor? I haven't seen you before." He glanced at her for a moment. "You could say that. Just filling in today." She nodded, not thinking much of it. "I'm Emma, by the way." "Mike," he replied, reaching inside the machine with practiced ease. She watched as his hands moved confidently, tugging a paper roller, adjusting a tray, and gently realigning a toner cartridge. The machine seemed to respond to him like an old friend. "You're really good at this," she said, impressed. "Fixing things helps me think," he replied. "Machines, people, most things just need someone patient enough to understand where things went wrong." Emma blinked at his words, caught off guard by the quiet depth behind them. She offered him a paper towel as he wiped the toner from his hands. Within minutes, the machine hummed back to life. The error message disappeared, and the first copy printed flawlessly. Relief flooded Emma's face. "You just saved my day," she said. "Thank you." Mike smiled as he stood up. "No problem. Happy to help. Can I get you a coffee? Or something from the cafeteria?" she offered. He waved it off kindly. "I'm good, thanks. Just glad it's working now." And with that, he picked up his toolbox and walked down the hallway, his steps slow and unassuming. Emma returned to her desk, not knowing she'd just spoken to the founder of the entire company, a man known for going undercover to evaluate people not by resumes or appearances, but by the kindness in their hearts. Emma watched the man, Mike, disappear down the hallway, toolbox in hand, and she found herself thinking about him far longer than expected. There had been something calming in his presence, a quiet steadiness that felt rare in the fast-paced chaos of the corporate world. The copier, which had previously seemed possessed, now hummed contentedly as it spat out the first set of reports. The presentation booklets were printing flawlessly, and Emma could finally breathe again. She sat down at her desk, wiping the remaining toner off her hands with a tissue. Her heart still pounded slightly from the rush, but now a sense of warmth settled in her chest. She had been sure she'd mess up the entire day, but that stranger, that janitor, had saved her from spiraling. 10 minutes later, 2 senior associates from marketing came briskly through the lobby, barely nodding at her before collecting the printed documents. Finally, one of them muttered, "Thought we were going to have to delay." Emma opened her mouth to explain what had happened with the copier, but they were already gone, too preoccupied with their meeting. She sank back in her chair, feeling invisible again. She glanced at the hallway where Mike had gone. Something about him stuck in her mind. Not just that he fixed the copier, though she was still amazed at how quickly and skillfully he had done it, but the way he spoke. "Fixing things helps me think. Machines, people, most things just need someone patient enough to understand where things went wrong." Those words echoed in her mind. It wasn't the kind of thing most janitors said, was it? Then again, what did she really know? Maybe he was just an old soul who had seen a lot. Maybe he was someone who once had bigger dreams. She felt a sudden shame creep over her. She had assumed his job just by his clothes. She'd called him the janitor without a second thought. What if he wasn't? What if he was more than that? She bit her lip. The truth was, it had been a stressful morning, and Mike had shown up with no name badge, no introduction, just a willingness to help. And she had been so grateful that she hadn't asked any more questions. Trying to brush it off, Emma turned back to her desk. Clients would be arriving soon. The office was beginning to fill with employees, stylish suits, expensive watches, high heels clicking on marble. Everyone looked polished, important, in control. Except for her. A little voice in her head whispered, "You don't belong here." But then she remembered Mike's calm, calloused hands adjusting the copier tray, the way he listened carefully to the machine's rhythm before gently coaxing it back to life. Maybe she didn't have to have all the answers right now. Maybe it was okay to be new, a little messy, a little unsure, so long as she kept showing up, kept trying, and stayed kind. "Emma, did you fix the copier?" came a voice from behind her. She turned to see Jenna, the operations manager. Her tone was sharp, her eyes assessing. "Oh, actually, a man named Mike helped me," Emma replied. "He was in a blue shirt, gray pants. I thought he might be from facilities." Jenna raised an eyebrow. "Mike? I don't think we have anyone by that name working in janitorial today." Emma paused. "He said he was filling in." Jenna frowned, thoughtful. Strange. Maybe someone from building maintenance. Either way, good job getting it working in time." And then Jenna walked off without another word, leaving Emma once again alone with the mystery. It wasn't until an hour later, when a few whispers started floating through the halls, that Emma's day took an unexpected turn. "He's here today." "The CEO?" "Yeah. Michael Archer. Supposedly flying in this morning. Some say he's walking around unannounced, undercover, like always." Emma's heart skipped a beat. Undercover. She suddenly replayed every word, every glance, every calm motion of the man who'd fixed the copier. Was it possible? Her hand froze above the keyboard. Could Mike, the man she'd thought was a janitor, actually be the founder of the company? The buzz around the office had become a low hum of speculation and excitement. Emma sat upright at her desk, pretending to type, but her eyes kept darting toward the glass elevator. The whispers only grew louder. "He's here already, I heard someone saw him in the copy room. No one knows what he looks like these days. He hasn't been photographed in years. They say he tests new employees by going undercover, sees who treats him like a human, not a title." Emma's palms felt clammy. She remembered the man in the worn shirt, the one who fixed the copier. Mike. The way he moved, the calm way he spoke, the wisdom in his words. Could it really be him? No. That was ridiculous. Why would a billionaire CEO kneel on a tile floor and repair a paper jam? Still, her heart thudded as the elevator dinged. Everyone turned. From the glass doors stepped a tall man. Clean-shaven, poised, wearing a navy blue tailored suit that perfectly fit his broad shoulders. His silver hair was neatly combed back, and a slim leather folder was tucked under his arm. He looked familiar. Emma's breath caught. It was him. The man who had been hunched over the copier in dusty gray trousers just hours earlier now walked with quiet command through the office lobby. No toolbox. No janitor's shirt. Just presence. Confidence. Elegance. Employees stood a little straighter. Some scrambled to adjust their collars or clear their desks. A few exchanged nervous glances as he passed. Emma remained frozen, her fingers curled on the edge of her desk. He glanced her way as he walked by, and offered a small, knowing smile. The same one he had given her this morning. Her heart skipped. She stood instinctively. "Mr. Archer," she blurted, barely louder than a whisper. He stopped. Turned toward her. "Yes, Emma," he said kindly. Everyone around her froze. He knew her name. Emma's voice faltered. You're the CEO." His eyes twinkled. "Among other things." Silence fell over the entire front lobby. Michael Archer glanced around briefly, then looked back at her. "Thank you for your help earlier. And for the kindness. You didn't have to offer me coffee. But you did." Emma flushed a deep red, remembering the moment, him wiping toner off his hands, her casually asking if he was the janitor. She wanted to disappear under her desk. I didn't know," she stammered. "That's the point," he said warmly. "You didn't know. But you were respectful. Patient. Kind." He took a step closer, lowering his voice. "It's easy to be nice to someone in a suit. But it says a lot more when you're kind to someone you believe has nothing to offer you." Emma didn't know what to say. Her throat tightened, and her thoughts swirled in a storm of disbelief and awe. The man she had assumed was just a passing maintenance worker. Was the founder, the visionary, the billionaire CEO everyone admired from afar. He gave her one last nod and continued walking through the office. This time, no one dared whisper. They just watched. As he disappeared around the corner, several colleagues glanced at Emma, curious, even impressed. One of the marketing directors actually smiled at her, as if seeing her for the first time. Emma slowly sat back down. Her world had shifted in just 5 minutes. Everything she thought she understood about people, appearances, and positions had been challenged. And at the center of it all was the man who had knelt to fix a copier without asking for thanks, but had left behind a lesson she'd never forget. It had been a whirlwind of a day. Emma's mind refused to settle. Even as the clock ticked toward the afternoon, she kept reliving the moment, Michael Archer standing in front of her, calm and collected, remembering her name, and thanking her like they were equals. Around the office, the atmosphere had changed. People walked by her desk with polite nods or lingering glances. Some even smiled, something that hadn't happened in the last 3 days. But Emma couldn't focus on the attention. She was still trying to understand what had really happened. She had spoken to the CEO. Not in a meeting. Not in a structured setting. But when he had knelt down beside her wearing old clothes, fixing a machine, with no expectation of recognition or reward. Then, at exactly 2:10 p.m., her desk phone rang. A soft but firm voice came through. "Miss Patel. Mr. Archer would like to speak with you in the executive office. Now." Her heart skipped a beat. She stood up too quickly and knocked over her water bottle. Scrambling to grab it and dab the desk dry, she took a deep breath, straightened her blouse, and walked toward the top-floor elevator. The executive floor was silent. Plush carpeting. Soft lighting. Paintings that cost more than her entire college education. She stepped into a sleek hallway, and at the end of it, the door to the corner office stood open. Michael Archer sat behind a minimalist desk, facing the skyline. He turned as she approached, smiling once again. "Emma," he said, motioning to the chair across from him. "Please, sit." She obeyed, knees stiff, heart hammering like a drum. "I'm not in trouble, am I?" she asked quietly. He chuckled. "Not unless fixing a copier and treating people with respect is against company policy." Emma smiled, though her nerves kept her hands clasped tightly in her lap. "I wanted to speak to you," he continued, "because moments like this are rare. You saw someone struggling, you thought I was a janitor, yet you offered help, a kind word, and even a cup of coffee. Do you know how many people walked right past me this morning without so much as a nod?" She lowered her eyes. "I feel terrible. I should have asked who you were." Michael shook his head. "That's not what this is about. You treated me the same before you knew who I was. That speaks to your character." He stood and walked over to the window, his voice reflective. "When I started this company 25 years ago, it was just me, a borrowed desk, and one old laptop. No investors. No safety net. Just grit. Over time, as we grew, I watched how people changed depending on what they thought someone could offer them. Titles started mattering more than kindness. Image replaced authenticity." He turned to face her. "That's why I do this, walk around unannounced. Dressed plainly. Fixing things. Listening. I don't want to know what people say to the CEO. I want to see how they treat the janitor." Emma nodded, still overwhelmed. "You have something," he said. "Not just skill. Not just punctuality. Heart. And in this company, we value that as much as talent." He walked back to his desk and opened a leather folder. "I'd like to invite you to join the CEO mentorship program. We only choose a handful of junior staff each year. You'll be trained across departments, shadow key leaders, and grow into someone who might, someday, sit in this chair." Emma's eyes widened. "Me? But I've only been here 3 days." "Exactly," he said, smiling. "And already, you've taught this company something important." For the first time that day, tears welled in her eyes. She blinked quickly to hide them. "Thank you," she whispered. Michael nodded. "Keep being exactly who you are. The world, and this company, needs more people like you." As Emma left the office, her reflection caught in the polished hallway mirror. She still wore the same shoes, the same cardigan with a coffee stain on the sleeve, but somehow, she felt taller. She wasn't just the receptionist anymore. She was seen. A week later, everything had changed, but in the most unexpected, humbling way. Emma stood by the glass windows of the 17th floor, gazing out over the city she used to feel so small in. The skyline shimmered in the early morning sun, but she wasn't just looking at buildings anymore. She was looking at possibility. The reception desk was no longer her post. She now worked in the mentorship suite, a sleek, collaborative space reserved for hand-picked junior employees from various departments. There were only 5 of them. And while most were from Ivy League schools or had years of corporate experience, Emma had earned her seat in a way none of them had, through sincerity. She still felt like an imposter sometimes. When her badge beeped at high-level doors. When she sat in meetings and Michael Archer, Mr. Archer, to everyone else, nodded at her comments like they mattered. When senior staff glanced at her with cautious curiosity, wondering what made her so special. The answer was simple: kindness. It hadn't come from a carefully polished resume, a prestigious internship, or a recommendation letter. It had come from a moment when no one was watching. Emma hadn't realized it then, but her real interview had been that morning, hunched over a broken copier with toner on her face and frustration in her bones. And she had passed, by treating someone who she thought had no influence, with dignity and patience. Now, she took every chance to do the same for others. She greeted the cleaning staff by name. She helped the shy new intern find her desk. She picked up coffee for the overworked analyst who never got to leave his computer. Small things. But things that mattered. One afternoon, she got a message. Michael Archer wants to see you. Conference room 4. Her pulse quickened, still not used to these summons, but she walked with confidence. Inside, Michael was alone, dressed more casually than usual, sleeves rolled up just like that morning in front of the copier. I hear you've been mentoring others, he said with a smile. Emma shrugged, smiling. Just paying it forward. That's the spirit we want to multiply here, he said, motioning to a chair. He handed her a folder. Inside was a proposal, the People First Initiative, a program focused on empathy-based leadership, started by Emma herself, and approved for full company implementation. She blinked. You're really doing this? You are, he corrected. I'm just giving you the space to lead it. Emma looked at the paper, then back at him. I'm just amazed. A few days ago, I thought you were a janitor. He laughed, then leaned forward. And you treated me better than some people treat board members. Never apologize for that instinct. Lead with it. There was a long pause, the kind that didn't feel uncomfortable, just full. Then Michael stood and extended his hand. Emma took it, and in that moment, she knew, this wasn't the end of her journey, it was just the beginning. Epilogue, 1 year later. Emma Patel stood on stage, delivering a keynote to a room full of young professionals. Behind her was a massive screen that read, "Leadership begins where ego ends." Her story had become a company legend. But more importantly, it had sparked a cultural shift within Archer Tech. Promotions were no longer just based on numbers, but on how team members lifted others. As she looked across the crowd, Emma smiled. She spotted a young man in the back row, nervously adjusting his tie, clutching a notepad too tightly. She remembered what that felt like. After the speech, she walked straight to him, extended a hand, and said, "Hi, I'm Emma. Want to grab coffee sometime and talk about your goals?" Because she knew now, real leaders don't rise above others. They lift them.